Let's get going here. So, hi everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Working with Workflow in Microsoft Dynamics GP. My name is Aaron Samuel. I'm one of the senior consultants here working with TGO. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Workflow 2.0 that's built into Dynamics GP. We're going to be talking a little bit about when it was introduced into GP, a little bit about the timeline of how it come to be for how it is today, and then we're actually going to dive into GP and take a look at the workflow functioning and a couple of the different features that are there. As well, at the end of today's session, we're going to have a little bit of a Q&A. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. So if you are new to TGO, a little bit about us. We are financial systems specialists. We're focused on the office of the CFO. We guarantee the success of our projects at a fixed fee. So we have been in business for about 28 years now, so we've been around quite a while. We've been working with many different accounting systems. At TGO, we're always looking for ways to educate our clients and our prospects with new solutions to help enhance their dynamic solutions. For the month of April, we actually have a 3-part webinar series on automating your processes. So today's webinar, we're focusing on the workflow part of Dynamics, and tomorrow we'll actually conclude this series by looking at some marketing automation. Next month, we're beginning a new series of 3 webinars, and all of those will be focused on best practices. So a little bit about Dynamics GP workflow. So workflow, what is it? So basically a workflow is something that everyone does every day, whether you realize it or not. So simply taking a invoice over to your manager, over to a supervisor, and asking them to sign off on that invoice so that you can then code it into your accounting system, that's workflow. And so that's a very basic type of workflow and can obviously expand right out and become very complicated. So basically we're faced with a decision, we have a yes-no answer, and based on that yes-no answer, we move on to the next step of that workflow process. And on that next step, we then can either conclude or we can move on to additional steps or conditions. So it's kind of the basic definition of a workflow, and that's what we're going to be looking at doing in GP. So workflow was introduced back in 2013, GP 2013 R2, so that was actually released in 2014, and it was a very basic workflow that was introduced. Some of you may remember before GP 2013 there was another workflow process that was available. That workflow actually used SharePoint and was very cumbersome. So at GP 2013, the release there, Microsoft built in the workflow process right into GP. So as they've been doing the releases, 2015 R2, now into 2016, they've been improving along this. So in the initial release, you were only able to do workflow on a purchase order, purchase requisitions. If you were using project or payroll, more specifically the US payroll, you were able to do approvals based on the payroll time cards and the project timesheets. So as they got moving along, introduced more new versions, they've increased this and added some new features to it. So now we're able to work on GL batches, payable batches, vendor cards, receivable batches. They've improved the project expense and kind of moved right up till today where most of the processes in GP, you can assign a workflow task to it. On top of that, they've also worked with the email functions in GP, so it sends out emails asking for approvals and stuff like that. As well as the doc attach. So if you're familiar with GP 2016, GP 2015, there's that document attachment feature where you can attach documents to transactions. So they've now incorporated that into the workflow as well. So that sends along with the transaction when it's submitted for approval. A little bit about the requirements of workflow. So most people have, or everyone has workflow already included in your GP release. So whether or not it's been activated, whether or not it's been registered is a different story, but everyone has it. To best utilize the workflow in your environment, it's really recommended that you have the email functionality working, and as well as you install the web services to kind of work with some of the features of the workflow. So the best part about workflow is it's free. The only cost to you will be to actually set it up, to invest some time in getting it functioning, to do the testing, and then the deployment into your staff. But once it's working, once you kind of have that training, it's a great feature. It automates a lot of processes within your organization. It will save a lot of time and save a lot of money. Save a lot of money as well. So when you're looking to deploy workflow, a couple of things that you need to get prepared for. So there is some setup and configuration that you need to do with this in order to get it working. So that's kind of where your VAR and where TGO can come in handy. So you can let us know if you're interested in doing this after today's session, and we can gladly help out to get this up and running in your organization. But once the setup and configuration is done, we're looking at the workflow design. So you have to kind of create that approval matrix, and I'll talk about that in a second. How you want to implement it, where it's going to affect, what type of processes we want to affect, and how you're going to use it in your organization. Once we've gone through that process, we've gone in, we've set up, and we've configured GP, you're going to be obviously looking at testing this out. So we want to make sure that we test it out fully before we actually deploy it into your staff's environment, and get everyone using it on an everyday basis. So I talked a little bit about the workflow design. So what do you need to prepare when you're walking into this project? What do you need to consider and put together for this? The best thing to look at, or the best thing to kind of get going and get prepared, is something called a matrix, or an approval matrix. So this approval matrix will help us design the workflows that you need to put in place, that you want to put into your organization. It will also let us know what steps or what thresholds that you need to identify for all these approval processes. So if we take a payables transaction, for example, your organization may have some rules and regulations in place where any type of transaction that's over $1,000 maybe needs a payables supervisor to approve it. If it's over $2,000, ask go to the director. Over $10,000, maybe the CFO, and then maybe a very large payables transaction, ask go to the board of directors. So the nice thing about workflow, you don't always have to be logged in order to work with the workflow in GP, and we'll take a look at that when we're looking at our demo. But workflow does work with email. So your supervisor, your director, your CFO, they don't actually need to be logged in GP in order to approve these workflow processes. So it'll send out an email. It'll have action items within this email. So they can approve, they can reject, they can delegate that approval process onto someone else. The nice thing, right from the email, they can hit those buttons once they reviewed the attachments. That'll send a message back to your GP web services, and it will go in and it will actually do that action on the workflow itself. Now, on top of that, you can go in, obviously, into GP. You can view this information, and you can approve from within GP in multiple places as well. So we'll definitely be taking a look at that today while we're in GP, and we're taking a look at the demo of this workflow process. So what's going to mean the most to you? Let's actually get into the system. Let's take a look at GP, and we'll take a look at how workflow is set up, how the basic components come together, and then we'll take a look at it in action. So we'll create a batch for about $2,000. We'll send out that approval, for the workflow, take a look at the email, and then we'll kind of follow through on that way. So I have my GP system here. I'm working with GP 2016 R2. That is the newest release that came out a couple months ago. So you don't need GP 2016 R2, but it does have all the features in it that we're looking for, the most up-to-date. It's going to have the most processes that you can actually work with. But as I said at the beginning of the process, if you have 2013 R2, you're on that version, then we can kind of take a look at some of the workflow processes and see if they meet your needs. So to get started, there is a little bit of workflow configuration that needs to be done. So very first on our workflow setup, we have to make sure that we have our email enabled, and then we also have some web services set up. So those become a little more complex. We need to make sure that the right components are installed, make sure that you have access to your email system and that type of stuff. So either your IT can help you with that, or please contact EGOO. Let us know if you're interested in doing this project, and we can help you along with that. So workflow itself is found under Administration, Setup, down underneath Company, and we have a menu called Workflow. So there's a couple of different components that make up our workflow process. One is called the workflow maintenance. So this is where we're going to go in, we're going to design our workflow processes, we're going to add our steps and our approval levels. We also have something here called a workflow calendar. And so the nice thing about this, you can actually assign your workflow actions and your workflow emails to a calendar. So maybe you have some requirements of your organization. I know over in Europe it's now a requirement that you're not allowed to contact staff after certain hours or on weekends. So you can put this schedule in there and make sure that your workflow isn't emailing out reminders on weekends and at midnight and waking up your staff. We also have the ability to edit the workflow messages that are going out as part of this email. So we'll take a look at some of these messages here. But they're very simple. If you're used to working with other email parts in GP, the messages are pretty much the same way. So we're using the exact same window that we use for all of the email messages that go outside of GP. So these messages here, they can be put together. We have action items in here as well that we can use, as well as some automatic or auto descriptions of the workflow tasks that the emails are being sent out for. So the nice thing about GP or about Microsoft is they've deployed all these messages standard. They're already working. You don't have to create these all from scratch. But if you do want to go in and make some changes or make some custom ones, then we can do that as well. So the main part of our workflow is under this workflow maintenance. So under the workflow maintenance, this is where we're actually going to put together the workflow. We're going to attach it to a transaction. We're going to put in the steps or the approval processes. So you can see when I open the window to start off with, we work with the purchasing module or the purchasing series. But the workflow does cover off the other series within GP. So we have financial, where we can do general ledger batch approvals. Sales, where we can do receivable batch approvals. So this will cover the receivables, not SOP. So think about your cash receipts and think about your AR transactions, credit memos, those types of transactions that are happening in that module. Under purchasing, we saw that we could do a payables batch approval, but we can also do a payables transaction approval. The difference between this, obviously the batch approval is going to be approving the batch as a whole, all the transactions within it. If we're doing a payables transaction approval, maybe you only want transactions again. If we think back to that approval matrix, where it was over $1,000, it should go to someone else, so over 10,000, it should go to the board, that type of thing. We can look at purchase orders, purchase requisitions, and vendor creations, which is actually an important thing to kind of control within your company. So there's a lot of audit risk around the creation of vendors, so having that approval there is quite important. Now there are other areas such as payroll. As I said, this kind of works more for the US payroll, not so much with the Canadian one, but if you have HR installed as well, we can do the employee profile approval and any employee skills that are being added to their profiles. Next is projects, so we can do expense report approval and timesheet approval. So if you are using project to track employee expenses or employee time being added into these projects, they can go through, they can be emailed out to the manager for approval before they actually get added into that project. And the last thing that we have here is the administration. So if you're familiar with 2015 R2 and greater, then you've heard of Smart List Designer. It kind of replaces that Smart List Builder program. It allows you to create your own custom Smart Lists, and it's built right into GP. So we can put on an approval for that. So anyone creating new Smart Lists, rather than muddying up that Smart List menu for you, you can go through approval to make sure that it's actually functioning, working correctly before it goes into production. So if I take a look at purchasing, I have one that's kind of set up and ready to go as a demo here today. So I'm doing a payables batch approval. When I take a look down, we just create new workflow, and what this is going to do for us is go in and create a new payables batch workflow. So I'm going to delete that one for now and come back. So once you create a new workflow, you're going to be prompted with a screen with a bunch of options that we can do here. So very first, we're going to have our workflow name, a little bit of description about it, and the type that we have. It's going to give you a summary of all the steps that you have within that workflow, or the approval steps as it goes through. And then we have the option to make this active or deactivate it. So at any time, even though you've created a workflow, maybe you want to deactivate it for a while, you can come in and just flick off or check off that flag. It will deactivate it, and it's not going to be hindering any of your processes. Now we do have a few options down here where we can send notifications. Now the email notifications that can go out, so the emails can go out to let you know that a batch has been submitted, it's been resubmitted, it's been approved, there's a task complete, someone has rejected it, it's been delegated to someone else, maybe they've recalled the workflow, so they've gone in and canceled that workflow. It's been escalated, so for some reason someone's not actually attending to that approval. So if they don't attend to it, then it will automatically go on to the next step or on to another person. If they've made edits to it, or finally it's actually been approved and it's ready to go. So we can turn these on and off, so depending on how many emails you want to flood your staff with, maybe you want to turn off most of them and just have a submit and a final approval. As well, we can send out carbon copies of these emails on to other staff. So maybe you always want your payable supervisor to know that a workflow batch has been approved or a transaction has been sent off to staff members to approve, and that payable supervisor wants to keep track of that. Now we do have a few other options that we have here. Do you want the approver themselves to be able to delegate the tasks out? Do you want the originator to be an approver? So sometimes that's going to be an audit conflict for your organization. If you're submitting it, then you can't approve your own batch, which kind of makes sense. But for today, I have it turned on because I'm the only user in my system, so I need to approve my own batch. As these workflows move through the steps, sometimes they can automatically move on if someone doesn't answer or it rejects, but we can say that we always require at least one approver to happen. So maybe we've set up 2 people on a step with the same condition, and the first one to approve actually allows the workflow to move on to the next step. So it requires at least one person to do that. And then as a final approver, we can say that if everyone just kind of drops the ball and nobody actually attends to the workflow, it will go to a final approver who will ultimately look at the workflow and decide if it gets approved. Now I've talked a little bit about if the task doesn't really get attended to, maybe someone went away on vacation and forgot to turn on their delegation or something like that. We can say that there's no action taken. It basically just keeps on emailing them until they come back from vacation 2 weeks later. It escalates to the next approver, so it bypasses them and it goes on to the next person. Or we can have a centrally located person. So maybe it gets escalated into an IT or into the CFO automatically so that they can say that, oh, that person is not attending to it, and they can be the approver there. Or finally, you can say just reject this. It'll go back to the person who requested it, and then they'll have to figure out how to get that batch approved after that. So once you have your workflow designed and ready to go, what we need to do next is add some steps. So you can see from the prior screen here, we have something called a new step. So every time you want to add a new level to your approval matrix or a new step within that approval process, we would just click on new step, and it's going to add steps down below my batch approval. So this is a really simple process, or a simple flow for myself. It just has one step in here. So I created my one step. This action is always required to follow this condition. So what we're going to do is we're going to say this action is required, and then we have a condition in here. And if this condition is not met, the workflow just ends. and basically it gets rejected and nothing happens. So when we're working with these conditions, we can click on the blue drill down arrow. It's going to take us into our conditions field. Now, depending on the workflow that you're working with, if you're in sales, you're in general ledger, you're going to have different fields that you can work with. But we can click on the drop down here and say batch header, ID is a certain ID, batch total control. Maybe they put a comment in to say this requires approval, and that way you know that this batch actually has to flow through a workflow. So basically what we're doing here is we're trying to write the language of the approval matrix. If this batch contains a certain condition, then it needs to go to a certain person. Otherwise, it's going to either end or it's going to go on to a different person. So we can have two conditions here. We can say if the batch ID has AP in front of it, then it goes to a certain approver. If the batch has EFT in front of it, then maybe this batch is supposed to be going to a different approver. So we can actually put in two conditions at the same step and say, let's go on to two different people for approvals. So you can see here I have a condition in here where the batch header total is greater than $1,000. Then this condition is met and it's going to go to that select person for approval. So right here is my condition and then my assignment. So if this condition is met, basically it's going to send an email out to myself. So this uses Active Directory. You can see when I click on my magnifying glass, it's actually going to come up and it's selected my Active Directory account. So that person has to work within the organization. So two conditions have to happen. They have to be set up as a user in GP, and they just have to have an email or an Active Directory account within your organization. So that does mean you can set up your board of directors. Even though they're never going to log in, they're never going to work with GP. If they have an email in your organization, you've just set them up as a user within GP, then this workflow can send out an email to them. They can approve, reject, deny right from the email. It'll send it back to your organization and that batch will get approved. There's no need for them to log in and actually do any actions within GP. Right here we have the option that we can apply this workflow to that workflow calendar. So again, if you don't want to bug your staff and other time or during outside business hours, you can assign that. And then the message that goes out. So this message is going to come out to me, will ask me for an approval, and we'll take a look at that email in a second. We also have the option to include documents that have been attached within that batch and include the Word templates that come out with it as well. So once we have our workflow set up, we have our steps ready to go, we can go in and we can test this process. So if you remember, I created a payables batch approval. So I'm going to come into my payables window. You're going to notice that once you have activated workflow, your window changes a little bit. We have a gray bar here, and we also have a workflow history that pops up here. So I'm just going to create a very simple batch and a payables transaction entry. Once they move in to the payables transaction entry, it's a regular process. Your AP clerk can enter in the payables transaction. Now this batch has to be greater than $1,000. So right now I'm going to make this one transaction $2,000. I'm also going to go ahead and using the document attach feature in GP, I'm going to attach a document to this transaction. So it's a simple Word file. There's not much in it, but it could be a PDF, it could be an email, it could be an Excel file, whatever your staff wishes to attach to this transaction. And now you'll notice that I have that attachment saved with this transaction. So I'll save this transaction, I'm going to close that, and I'm going to come back and bring my batch up again. So you're going to notice now that our workflow has a submit button, and we also can see that the status of this batch, so it has not been submitted. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click on submit. You're always going to be prompted with an action here. So you can leave some notes for the approver. If you're rejecting, you're approving, you're denying, the same window will open up and ask you to leave some notes. So once I click on submit, two things are going to happen. One thing, it's going to actually submit this batch for workflow within GP. It's also going to go to the external system and it's going to send an email out to the approver asking for an approval on that batch. So if I go back and take a look at our batch, you can see that the status here, it's pending approval. It lets you know who it's waiting for the approval from. We can click on workflow history, and this will show us what happened, who it's sitting with. It's pending right now, and it's a full history of this. If they were to reject it, you will see the rejection and you'll see some notes on it. If they approve it, if they deny it, if they delegate it to someone else, you'll actually see the whole history of this batch. Now, as an approver, there's a couple different ways that you're going to see this. So on my home page, under my to-do, I've enabled workflow tasks as one of the menus. So you can see I have a payables batch now, notice, saying that it's in for approval. Another spot where you can work with the approvals, in the purchasing module up on the side menus here, you can see payables transactions, and if you expand it down, you have payables transactions which are pending approval. So this will show you batches that are waiting for your approval. Not sure why I didn't show there. Now, the best part of this is the email and the email functions, because that seems to make the most sense for everyone, and that's what everyone wants to see. So if you take a quick look at my email here, you can see I've received 2 emails. One is telling me that this action has been submitted. So remember, we were saying we want to know what's happening. Now the best one is this payables batch here. So this email goes out to the person who's required to approve. It's giving them a basic information about it. This is step 1. It's a payables batch approval for the batch name demo. They can click on the quick link, and this is actually going to drill back into GP. So if they have GP open and they have it on their open in their environment, they can click on this and it will drill right back into the batch itself. Now you notice I was talking a little bit about the actions. So right within the email, you have approve, reject, and delegate. So the user themselves can actually click in here and just approve it. There's no need for them to log into GP, no need for them to actually go in and view all the information. Now I do have 2 attachments with this email as well. So the very first attachment, if we click on it, we can actually see the edit list for this batch. So the user can scroll down, they can take a look at what's being approved, what they're actually approving, and make sure everything's kosher. Now I did attach a document to my payables transaction as well. So I can take a look at that attachment. So if there's many attachments within that batch, all the attachments will line up one by one, and the approver can kind of flip through the attachments to make sure that everything looks the way it should be looking. So everything here is good for myself. I'm going to click on approve. So this will then open up and ask for those comments, the approval comments. And approved. So my approval has now been submitted back to GP. Now if we come back into GP, we take a look at our batch. We'll click on the batches here. I can see that my batch now has a completed status. It's been approved, and I'm ready to post it. At any time when I've submitted it for approval, I can recall it. You can view the history. You can see what's happened. I can see that it's been approved, and I can see my comments that have gone along with it. Now the last thing that I want to cover with this is, as an approver, maybe you're going on vacation, maybe you're taking some time off work. So GP also has, under your own user preferences, the ability to do workflow delegation. So if you're not around for a while, you can actually say, automatically delegate all my workflow types, and then you can select another user within the GP program to delegate those tasks to, and submit a start date and an end date for that process. Oops. So that basically covers off how workflow works. As you can see, the workflow covers off many different parts of the program. Oops, sorry, let me try and get out of this window here. So that covers off everything to do with workflow. As we did go over, so it touches many different parts of the GP program. It is built right in. It comes standard with GP, and it can be activated for any of these different processes within the GP program. So very easy to use, very simple to set up, very powerful. It covers off a lot of conditions that can be met, and obviously works with those attachments and works with the edit lists and provides as much information as possible to the approver themselves. So how can TGO help you with this process? So as we were saying, there is a little bit of setup. There's a little bit of planning that needs to be done, testing, training, and obviously the deployment into your organization. So TGO, we can help you do that. We can meet with you. We can help you prepare that approval matrix, make sure it's all laid out properly, make sure that you can take that back to your board of directors and get that approval matrix approved. Once it's been approved, we'll help you do the configuration and the deployment of the workflow module, train your staff that's going to be involved. If you think about it, this may go out to managers, it may go out to supervisors of other departments. So they need to know that sometimes they may be getting these emails. How do they handle these emails? How do they delegate? How do they work with this process? Once we're done, we can help you with your testing, the deployment, and provide support with, or provide ongoing support with this process. So just a little couple housekeeping notes. So I did mention at the beginning of this webinar that next month we will be running a series on best practices. So if you note down these dates, and please register for these webinars, we'll be covering off expense management May 16th, Microsoft Dynamics 365 on May 17th. It's a new version, or it's a new ERP that's actually been released by Microsoft. It's very good, cloud-based. And then on May 18th, we'll be talking about budgeting best practices as well. So please visit tgo.ca events calendar, and you can register for all those webinars. The last thing that I want to go over here, TGO right now is having a offer. So TGO is having an offer of 45 days of TGO's Unlimited Financial Systems Assurance Plan for free. How do you qualify? If you spend an hour or two with one of our GP consultants, we can review your system and make sure that it's up to par and that we can support you on an assurance plan. So this offer is available for anybody that's not currently on a TGO support plan. Like I said, in order to provide you with this support, one of our consultants will spend an hour or two with your team and ensure that we can provide you that support that you need. TGO does have an in-house support team, and it's solely dedicated to supporting our clients. They're a really great team, and they'll help you out with any troubleshooting or issues that you have with your system. So that will conclude today's webinar on workflow. So I want to thank everyone that attended today, and now I'll open up the floor to any questions that you may have. So I'm just going to take a look. I know they've been written into our queue here. So the first person is saying we've activated vendor workflow, but changes to a vendor does not trigger a workflow. Has this been improved in 2016 R2? So unfortunately this has not. So it is still on a brand new vendor creation. It's not actually on the update of vendor information. So that vendor workflow that we were looking at there, it's basically when you create a brand new vendor, you've created a brand new card. It adds as a new record that's being inserted into the tables behind GP. So that's what's actually triggering the workflow. It still hasn't come to encompass if someone's gone in and maybe changed the address or the remit to or something like that, unfortunately. So they haven't got there yet, but the good thing to note, they are, with every release of GP, they are focusing on this workflow and making it better and better. So definitely that might be something that if you log into the Connect community for Microsoft, you can submit that as a request or as a feature that you're looking for. But we can also kind of cross our fingers and hope that they'll do that within the next couple of releases. Okay, any other questions? So does workflow approvers require a client license? So if you're looking at the way that licenses work within GP, so licenses are concurrent licenses, which mean that if you have 10 licenses, you can have 10 users in the system at one time. But that doesn't mean that you can't have more than the 10 users actually set up in GP. So you can set up as many users as you want to in GP. You can set up 100 users. It just means that 10 people can log into the actual GP program at the same time. Now the nice thing with the workflow, if you do enable the email and you enable that web services, your users don't actually have to log into GP in order to do the approval, the rejection, and the delegation. So no, it won't require a license, so you can very well set up that set up your supervisor that's working in one of your other departments as a user in GP, set up the workflow, it'll send them the email. They never actually have to log into GP and take up one of your licenses in order to do that approval workflow or approval task. Especially if you're on one of the newer versions, so 2016 and 2016 R2, the document attachment's been included with the workflow, so they're going to get those attachments that come out as well. They're going to be able to see the edit list with the batch approval. They'll be able to see the transaction if you're doing a transaction approval and any attachments that have been attached to that workflow. We have another question here. If the PO has been submitted for approval, can the user edit the PO? Great question. So any transaction that has been submitted for approval cannot be edited, and that includes a PO. So what that's going to do is it's going to make sure that a user doesn't submit a transaction for a smaller amount and then go in and edit it for a larger amount either after it's been approved or while it's waiting for that action. So you'll notice that if I take a look at my payables batch again, oh, sorry, this one's been completed. But you'll notice that I have a recall here. So even after the action or after the workflow has been completed, all you can do is recall. So if you have to make an edit, you have to recall your batch. That will allow you to go in and make edits to the transaction. This includes the purchase order as well. So if they need to make edits to the purchase order, they have to recall it. They make their changes, and then they have to resubmit the entire transaction or the entire PO for reapproval. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Perfect. Okay. So definitely, if you have any other questions, please contact TGO. Contact your client manager. You can contact myself, A. Samuel, say A-S-A-M-U-E-L @tgo.ca. We can help you get those questions answered. If you're interested in that 45 days of the TGO's Unlimited Financial Systems Assurance Plan, you're not already a customer of ours on an assurance plan, please let us know, get in contact with us, and we'd love to help you out in that way. So again, thank you for attending today's webinar, and have a good day.